Welcome to Ferns Hot Take Sports with your host, Nick Fernbaugh. I'm in the studio this time. I wanted to do something fun. And I'm not, it's going to take me a while to get used to looking at this camera. I'm so used to looking over here. We're going to be talking about some stuff with the Super Bowl coming up around the corner. I wanted to catch up with some things with that, talk about some baseball stuff, and kind of just spend an hour just talking, a little bit like a podcast sort of. So I guess let's start with the recap of I'm going to pull up my phone here to make sure I remember. We're going to start with the recap of the games that took place on Sunday. I unfortunately watched the duquesne basketball game before that, and I'm still very upset about that. I'll talk about that in a little bit later down the line. I guess opening up with the conference championships, you had Philly beat the living snot out of Washington, 55-23, in a game that was not even close. It was ugly. It was quite ugly to watch. And I think one of the things that caught me off guard was I knew Philly was going to be able to run the ball. Not that well, I guess, is the big thing. And I also was surprised at how well they threw the ball. Jalen Hurts was unbelievable. 20 for 28, 246 yards and a touchdown. He did get sacked twice. And what's surprising is most of the yards came from three guys, essentially. Because Kenneth Gainwell and Barkley had 3 catches for 20 yards. The other 17 catches for 226 yards came from A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, and Devontae Smith. That's it. It's literally it. Those are the only 3 guys who had yards, basically. And you know it's bad when after Saquon Barkley rushed his tail off, 15 carries for 118 yards and 3 touchdowns. He had 3 touchdowns, good Lord. Will Shipley had 4 carries for 77 yards and a touchdown. Will Shipley. My God. Now, nothing on Washington. I think Jalen Hurts gave it a good effort. That throw for Tress Way was so good. But the problems were they didn't run the ball well. And Ertz was the only one who really did anything on the receiving game, especially in the second half. It seemed like Ertz was the only one who was capable of catching a football in the second half. Top it off with fumbles by McNichols on that kickoff return, Eckler's brutal fumble late in the game, and then De'Ami Brown's fumble early on. And it was just mistake after mistake. And I think it's really disappointing because after how well Washington did, you would have liked to see a cleaner game. When they've played 2 great, clean games against Tampa and the Lions, it just wasn't their year. I think it's just disappointing because, well, Eagles are notorious. Eagles fans are notorious. But there's nothing. You can't give anything but the highest of props. Zach Bond has played so good this year. He might generally win Defensive Player of the Year. It's him or Pat Surtain. I don't think Trey Hendrickson gets it, and Myles Garrett I don't think did enough to be worth it. And I think T.J. Watt was a 5th guy. He's not winning it. So, in my opinion, if somebody's going to win it, I think it might go to a linebacker for the first time in a very, very long time. And, I mean, another game where he proved it. 12 tackles, easily led the team, and a forced fumble. He has 150 tackles, 5 forced fumbles, and 4 sacks. In the regular season, by the way. Add on another 25 tackles and a pick and a forced fumble. My God. Saints fans, I'm sorry, Dad, are crying that they let this guy go. He is unbelievable. And their defense is just so nasty, so stingy. Their defensive pressure is super strong. Nolan Smith, unbelievable. Orrin Burks had an unreal game. He had an unreal game after Nakobe Dean. Since Nakobe Dean has gone down, he has been phenomenal. And what is the wildest thing? Brandon Graham's been out for a while. People might not know. There's the rumors that he could be ready for the Super Bowl. And if everyone knows, that's his last game. That's going to be his last game. He said at the start of the year, this will be my last game of the season. And to know that he could go out with a Super Bowl win, you can't write that. You can't write that any better. You really can't. And so, yeah, all I could do is say congratulations, Eagles. You deserve it. You played 2 tight games, and in the biggest stage, you beat the crap out of your own division rival. Nothing but respect. Oh, and then we get to game 2. Yeah, I know I didn't have a ton to say about the first game, but the first game was kind of a beatdown. Washington, I think, will be back in the playoffs, given a lot of the parity and lack of consistency in the NFC. And then as for because at this point, the only teams that are really consistent right now are the Bucks. I don't think they're Super Bowl contenders. The Lions, who choked, and the Eagles. So I think Washington will be around for a very long time. Now let's get to the game I think a lot of people are looking at. Buffalo and Kansas City. The Chiefs take down the Bills 32-29. Josh Allen 0-4 against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. And when I think he's 7-1 in all the other games. Some blame should fall on Allen. I think right off the gate, the one big thing I remember was that first drive in which he almost threw back-to-back passes that should have been picked off. I think they ran as good as I think they could have with James Cook. I don't know why they went to Ty Johnson later in the game. I don't know why James Cook only had 13 touches on the football when he averaged 6 yards a carry and was not getting stopped by the Chiefs. He couldn't be stopped by the Chiefs. I just think they made a lot of little mistakes that came back to bite them. Because, again, another game where it's not like the Chiefs ran all over them. They only they averaged about 4 yards, but nothing crazy. On the receiving side, it was just big mistakes. They let Juju get two deep passes. They let Xavier Worthy get that Moss and then a touchdown. There was just a lot of little mistakes that I think kept adding up. And I don't know. It was frustrating to watch. That turnover on downs could have gone either way. And I know everybody's always going to say, and it's always going to be under a microscope when it's the Chiefs. The problem I have at this point, and I think a lot of people are whining because they don't want to see the Chiefs back there, and there's no parity, and the league's scripted, and yada, 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 yada. To that, you know what I have to say? I'm not even going to talk about the NFC teams. The Bills have had 4 chances and failed. The Dolphins had a chance and failed. The Ravens had a chance and failed. The Steelers had a chance and failed. The Bengals have had 2 chances and they've won once. The Browns had a chance and failed. The Texans have had multiple tries and failed. The Colts had a chance and failed. The Jaguars had a chance and failed. The Titans had a chance and failed. How many teams have I just listed? It's like 2-15 or 2-17 or something like that. In the 7 years, he has not lost. He has never lost a divisional round game. Call it rigged or not, almost every team in the AFC has had a crack at it. The only teams that haven't, as far as I know, against Mahomes has been the Chargers, the Broncos, the Raiders, and the Jets. Every other team at some point between 2018 and 2024 have had one shot or more to beat them, except for the Chargers, Broncos, Raiders, and Jets. So 11 different teams have had a try. And only 2 teams have been successful. Tom Brady and the Patriots, and Joe Burrow. And Like I said, he's only ever lost 3 playoff games. 2 of them were to Tom Brady. I really don't know what you do at this point. I don't know what the Bills do differently. I don't know what the Ravens do differently. I don't know what the AFC does differently at this point to take him down. I really don't. It really seems like everything they've thrown at the Chiefs has failed. And I don't know what you do differently at this point. I really don't. Even when everybody wants them to fail, they keep winning. And so the problem I have is, again, there were some calls that were questionable, and there were 2, the deep ball to Worthy and the 4th and 1 that looked like they did get it wrong. And the deep ball to Worthy actually should have been an incomplete pass. And then there was a penalty after the fact. So I guess, long story short, the problem I have is I don't know what the answer is if you're Bills fans, besides, like, curl into a ball and cry, like, straight up. I don't know what they do differently. Get better defense? I mean, you can try. That's just really vague. Get a star wide receiver? I don't think that helps. Maybe it does. Maybe you get one bailout catch. But there were just times where the team just needed to be better. And the biggest thing was just situational play calling. And that killed them. I don't know. I don't know what's going to come from Super Bowl, but I guess if I were to take Super Bowl predictions, I know everybody in my circle of friends are going to hate me who watch football. It's going to be the Chiefs. I'm sorry, Jack. I'm sorry, Jimmy. I love you both. Love you both to death. Like, I love you guys. It's going to be the Chiefs. I can't see a world where that doesn't happen. Maybe they prove me wrong. I do think it's going to be a great game. I do think it's going to be an unbelievably entertaining game. The most exciting running back, 2 of the stingiest defenses in football, Patrick Mahomes, A.J. Brown, a lot of talent on both sides of the ball, on both teams, and you're going to have what I think is a really good game. The problem is it's the same crap, and nobody wants to see the same crap. And I think that's where the problems are really starting to lie at. So I'm going to take my bets. I'm going to say the Chiefs take it. I think it's going to be, I'll say 28-24. I'll say 28-24 is going to be the final score. I think it'll be a really good game. I think it's going to come down to the wire. But I think the Chiefs do take it. I do think their defense will come up with bigger plays. And I do think their situational awareness will be better. Like, listen, at this point, offensive lines are both pretty solid. Their offensive lines on both sides are solid. The run game is significantly worse with the Chiefs. The pass game is better. Like, the pass and run game are both better with the Eagles. I will stand here and say that. I do think the Chiefs have one thing that the Eagles will screw themselves with, and that's situational awareness. Sirianni has skated by on a lot of lucky decisions and a lot of success of the talent around him. People were calling for his job at the start of the year, and rightfully so. He lost them 2 games. He got coached circles around by Baker and the Bucs again. I do think if there's one thing that's going to lose it for them, it's either their secondary, which I think is talented but is young and inexperienced, and Sirianni. So I do think the Chiefs walk away victorious. Now, one thing I wanted to talk about was baseball. There's been a lot of things going on. one thing I thought was very interesting was the fact that I don't know. It was kind of a weird offseason in which some things have happened. Soto to the Mets, Blake Snell and Roki Sasaki to the Dodgers, because of course. Phillies traded for Jesus Luzardo. Willie Adames to the Giants, which I thought was crazy. Max Fried to the Yankees. I think I said Corbin Burns to the Diamondbacks. Bregman still hasn't signed, which is wild. Severino got the largest contract in Athletics history. Santander went to a division rival, which is wild to think. So, it's the Blue Jays, by the way. And so, one thing, and like I said, this will be a segment I'll talk about for like 10, 15 minutes, is kind of where baseball is right now. And I think one thing that a lot of people are crying about is the Dodgers. Trust me, I want to be one of those guys, but the Phillies have one of the highest payrolls as well. So it's like, I wasn't the biggest fan of their offseason, but I also know if they weren't going to trade anybody away, they probably weren't going to make too many moves. They made some nice, solid depth moves, I think, but I don't know if it's going to bend the needle and you're relying on the same group of guys. But I guess going with the Dodgers, they are printing monopoly money. I'm convinced they have a monopoly money printing press underneath their stadium. Because I don't understand how they still get the money. They got Roki Sasaki. They signed Michael Conforto. They re-signed Blake Trinan. They re-signed Teoscar Hernandez. They extended Tommy Edman. They paid... who else did they get? They got someone else. Oh, and then they gave that ridiculous contract to Blake Snell. Everybody's crying about that fact. It's unhealthy. It's bad for baseball, and yada, yada, yada. But what I learned from... there was a great video I recommend everybody watch. There's a guy I watch. His name is Urinating Tree. He's so funny. But every now and then he does really well-made videos. And one of them, it was one of the more recent ones he did. It was called The Artful Dodgers. And in that video, he talked about an epidemic that I think is really true with baseball. And it's the fact that there needs to be a floor. If you're going to introduce a cap, you have to introduce a floor. At the very least, you have to introduce a floor. I get a cap's nice because it punishes the big teams. It stops the big bad teams from spending all the money in the world. That's not the problem with baseball. Maybe the luxury tax is a bit of a joke, don't get it twisted, but that's not the problem with baseball. The problem with baseball is the fact that you have so many teams around who will not spend money. They won't. The Rays, the Pirates, the Marlins, the White Sox, the Twins, the A's, the Nats, to some degree. The Nats have been a pretty cheap franchise. Cleveland, despite the playoff success. The Mariners. The Tigers. The Reds. The Cardinals. I was going to throw the Diamondbacks in this mix until they made the Corbin Burns signing. I'll let them slide. They're kind of like in that middle ground with teams it's like them, the Rockies, the Blue Jays, Kansas City. Now. They weren't before, but now. Teams like that are in the middle. And then they're the big teams, which are the Braves, the Mets, Philly. Oh, add Milwaukee to the cheap teams. Despite the fact they're always successful, they just let Willie Adames walk. So now you have the teams who spend money. Oh, and the Giants are in the middle. So the teams who spend money, that's the Padres, the Dodgers, the Cubs, Philly, the Mets, the Braves, the Yankees, the Astros, and the Rangers. There were, and I like I said, this is the bit I'm trying to remember. They talked about the fact that 3 teams still have not signed a player. 3 teams haven't signed a player. And the 1 year 14 or 15 mil, I can't remember if it's 14 or 15 mil, that Michael Conforto got with the Dodgers is more money spent in free agency than 9 teams in baseball. As of that video being posted, which I think was 8-9 days ago. And so I want to agree with fans saying that the salary cap should be put in place, but the problem I see is until you start punishing the teams who don't want to spend, don't care about spending, and won't spend, like how many times is Bob Nutting going to not care about the Pirates and run bare bones operations? Because a lot of his businesses are not doing well. And the Pirates are one of his biggest sources of income, which shouldn't be the case since, you know, the Pirates are terrible. They have they have like the 3rd or 2nd worst attendance in baseball despite having one of the most beautiful stadiums in baseball. And Bally Sports is going. But I think they're okay now I think they have AT&T Sportsnet Pittsburgh, I think is what it is. So I think they're good in that sense. So I don't know if TV deals are really getting them that much, if the luxury tax is helping them a lot. I really don't know at this point. But the problem I have is until those teams like take being a baseball team seriously, you're not going to have an even playing field. And I know with the floor, everybody's going to be like, oh, well, they'll just spend exactly to the minimum. Okay. It's still miles better than what they are now. I remember I talked about this right before free agency started. It was like right at the end of the regular season. If you set the floor of baseball for 26 guys at $100 million right now, $100 million, that's the floor you have to spend to for 26 guys. I'm telling you right now, you could get that happening. The reason I say this is because when we talked about the floor being $100 million. I'm almost positive 11. It was just right around the end of September. So I know they had a lot of rookies up and like guys making major league minimums, and a lot of those teams are doing that, and so that could be a little bit skewed. But there were 11 teams who had under $100 million and were running operations. I think Moneyball has really been poison to baseball because it showed teams that you don't need to even try to spend money if you want to compete, which means that you can have owners who don't care about funding a baseball operation and occasionally make the playoffs with a lot of talent. And then when you have to pay them up, we'll just trade them for scraps and, you know, we'll roll out the next prospects who will get traded in 5 years, and maybe we'll make the playoffs 2 or 3 times in that span. I mean, the Rays have pretty much done that to a T. The Red Sox are kind of running in that issue right now. I think they're starting to get out of it a little bit, but they were for a while since selling this. Isn't it the Fenway Sports Group now? I forget who it was. But the reason I say this is that I think Moneyball has really kind of been this poison that has come to baseball, because back then it helped. You had to find some way to fight back against the Yankees, who could outbid everyone, any and everyone. And I wasn't against that then. But when you're running out rosters where teams like the Mets and the Dodgers, and I'll throw Philly and the Padres and the Yankees in there, who are spending hundreds. They're spending 9 figures. Like, we're talking like $200-300 million rosters. This is more than like $100 million to like $5 million. We're talking $300 million to like less than 30 in some cases, like the A's were last year. They had a roster that was like $26 million for the entire team. That's embarrassing. That's so embarrassing. That told me you don't even care to try. But did I expect anything less from John Fisher? No, never. Rats. And so that's just kind of one of those things that I'll talk about and kind of wrap up with the baseball segment is I think Moneyball is not a bad thing at heart, but I think you have to establish some way to get teams to spend money because unless that starts happening, baseball is never going to get better. And considering there is a chance for a possible lockout in 2026, that should be scary for fans. The fact that if a floor doesn't get established now, I don't think it'll get established until it might not get established until the 2040s. Which means for half of baseball, why would you care? Why would you care if you were half of baseball fans? You wouldn't. And that's the tough pill to swallow. So that just is how it is. The next thing I'm going to talk about rolling into this next segment is Duquesne basketball. Oh, boy. Yeah, that game sucked. For those who don't know, I went out to a bar to celebrate one of the guys who I work with, their birthday. Shout out Tristan. And we sat at the bar at noon and watched Duquesne crap down their leg and lose to Fordham. Ain't that wonderful? And for reference for Fordham, not only did they go 0-6 and had lost 6 straight conference games to open up the season, their coach got suspended for recruiting violations. They lost to an assistant coach. Coaching, what was it, like his first game? Absolutely embarrassing. And I have been vocal about this, and it's funny because if you watch the pregame shows at DSTV, Duquesne Student Television, they're great stuff. I produce them all the time for my boys Jack and Dylan. I love those two. But one thing, and I've talked with them relentlessly off camera, and I've talked about it with Tristan, I've talked about it with Hunter from A10 Talk, and I've talked about it with Abby from the Post-Gazette, and I've talked about it with another friend of mine who works the games. Her name's Rebecca. And Mike O'Grady. This team can't shoot free throws. It's beyond aggravating now. They're dead last in the A10, and it was at 64%. And fun fact, they didn't even reach that. They didn't even reach that at the Rose Hill gym. They went 57%. So that rate's going to go down even further. I've never seen a team in my life so incapable of shooting a free throw. They've lost 4 games at this point as a result. And if you think I'm joking, I'm not. That's the bit that's insane to me. They lost the St. Peter's game because they couldn't shoot a free throw. They lost the Maine game because they couldn't shoot a free throw. They lost the Lipscomb game because they couldn't shoot a free throw. They lost the Princeton game because they were freaking... Actually, they were okay in the Princeton game. I'll let that one slide. But they lost the Milwaukee game because they went 15 for 23 and left 8 free throws at the line. And I think I saw this stat, and if I remember correctly, I was talking about it with Tristan when we were at the bar, and I watched Jay Sean Corbett brick a free throw. It drives me insane. It was pretty much like if the team shot 70% at the line, they're 9-0. When they're under 70%, they are 0-11. Oh, if they shoot over 70%, they've won every game. If they're under 70%, they've lost every game. That's insane. I don't know how many times you can ask them to shoot hundreds of free throws during practice. I don't know how many times you could have them just stand at the line and dribble the ball until they feel comfortable. I don't know how many times or how many pressure situations you have to test them not in games for it to click. And it's everybody. It's been Nietzsche's. It's been Crawford. It's been Dinkins. It's been Corbett. It's been Chabi. Chabi went 1 for 4. And so Duquesne sits at 6 right now, behind Dayton and UMass both got ahead of them as a result of that brutal loss. As they go tomorrow to play St. Joe's in Philly. Don't see that going well. But what I think is concerning, and I will say this, is just the defense has been bad. The rebounding has been abysmal. It has been atrocious. They consistently get beat down low. And it's not that hasn't changed. Wilburn plays every now and then, but it hasn't changed. Like, Doosan's gone. That's it. And the Chabi twins are gone. But one hadn't played since, like, the middle of the season of last year. So, they still had Dave. They still have Dixon. They still have Nietzsche's. They still have Chabi. Those three should be capable, with their size, strength, and talent, to get down low and get rebounds. And when they brought in a big forward like Jay-Sean Corbett, he should be good at doing that as well. It's just been careless mistakes this season. And now they look down the barrel of a tough stretch to go on. After starting the year off with a pretty light non-conference schedule, and they still haven't done well with it. They lost to Davidson, and they lost to Fordham. Those are 2 games you can't drop. So what's going to happen? They got to play VCU. They got to play Dayton again. They got to play St. Joe's. Loyola Chicago is going to come rolling in at some point. You got to play, I think I said VCU. You got to play George Mason. You got to play St. Louis. You got to play UMass. Like, this isn't going to get easier. This is going to get way harder. And if this team doesn't start figuring their things out, their issues out, this team is going to slide so bad through the second half of the year. They really are. I thought they started getting their form back when they rolled through and they went, I think they went 7-6-3 to end conference play. And then before the Dayton game, they went 4-1 through their first 5 conference games. I thought things were finally starting to look up. And then they got smoked, embarrassed by Dayton. And I was at that game, and that was miserable to watch. And sometimes I just swear there's no fight back from this team. When they get punched in the mouth, they get punched in the mouth and they go down. I don't know. And I remember hearing a quote from the post-game presser from Chabi, and I think it's probably been better. But he said, we have to come together. It seems like we all don't like each other. We got to learn to get along better. It seems like we all don't like each other. That's concerning. I'm not going to give him too much flack, but I feel like there's some things that I know Drew Joyce can do better with. And I think he knows he can do better with. I think he'll figure it out within time. Maybe this first year is just going to be rough, but man, sometimes you'd like to see more fight out of these guys than what you get sometimes. I think he built a good basketball team on paper, but I don't think he built a good basketball team practically, because it seems like everybody is good at their own thing, but it doesn't mesh together on the court sometimes. It seems like Kareem doesn't mesh with the big forwards. It seems like Dinkins can't find anybody when it comes to passing the ball. It seems like Jay-Sean can't find lanes to make good shots from. It seems like the big men either can't finish dunks when they get them, or can't out-muscle guys sometimes, despite their size. I don't know. Like I said, it's going to be interesting. I don't see the St. Joe's game tomorrow going well. And for those wondering, I will be live streaming this game tomorrow. I'll be live streaming the game tomorrow here at DSTV with Jack, and Dylan will probably show up halfway through. So I hope you all stay tuned for that. I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah. I think we're going to wrap it up there as like my first kind of episode back. For everybody at Ferns Hot Take Sports, thank you all. I know it's been years. It's been probably I probably haven't uploaded a video since I've gotten into college. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I love you all so much. You know that? I hope you all know that. I love you all to death. But I'm so excited to be back. I'm going to be uploading content now. I don't know if it's going to be more duquesne related, if it's going to be just regular sports related, or anything in between. But we will talk about a lot of stuff going forward. One thing I will be doing next time is talking about the head coaching hires for football, because I also need to talk about the fact that Clint Kubiak left the Saints and now is on Seattle. So we'll get to that in a little bit. We'll get to that next time. But yeah, I'm going to wrap this up. I hope you all enjoyed. It's been Nicholas Fernbaugh from Ferns Hot Take Sports, and I'm signing off for the night. Peace.